Man, how would you benefit from a resource in your life that was dedicated 100% to your growth, your personal development, and as we say, helping you summit life's climb? Welcome to The Next Stage, a podcast for men. I'm extremely glad that you're with us. I'm so excited about today's episode. My name's Rob Stout, and I am your host of The Next Stage, and today we are setting up the next 4 episodes. They are really all about the foundational aspects of your life. If you want to picture 4 pillars in your life that the whole of your life is set on, it's established on, it's growing out of, that's how crucial this next 4 episodes are. And we're going to start off, but I'm going to give them to you up front. They start with P's. So there's alliteration. That's a fancy word for they all sound the same. I think that's what it means. But they all start with P's, and they're 4 actions that a man can build his life out of. And those 4 P's are this: passion, power, purpose, and perspective. Passion, power, purpose, perspective. Remember those. You won't have to memorize all of them because you're going to be with us for the next 4 episodes. I'm sure you're going to pass this on. And this is going to be something that you can hang your life on. And the reason I believe so passionately about this is because this is what my life has been rebuilt on. We're going to talk about that rebuilding of life and all of that throughout several episodes. But I'm just excited that you're with us. Today, we're going to dive into just one of those P's, and that is passion. Here's why you need to lean into this. Number one, they're just really good fundamentals. And I don't know many areas of life where somebody is saying, hey, listen, here it is. Build your life on this. If you are a dad, this is great stuff to begin to instill in kids as young as you can find them, as young as you have them until when they start listening, which is probably in their 30s. I don't know. You better start younger than that. But a dad with a son to be able to talk about these things, dads and daughters, and I've got 3 of them, there's no difference because we're all built the same way. So designed differently, but fundamentally built the same. So passion, power, purpose, perspective. We're going to launch out this episode and talk about living with sustained passion. Living with sustained passion, the first one of those P's. And to get us going, to start thinking about this, I was thinking about a journey that I had a couple years ago now. It was 2 summers ago, I believe. And I moved to Colorado a long time ago, 1995. I grew up in the great state of Ohio. Go Buckeyes. I know that's very polarizing, but I'll say it anyway. But grew up in Ohio, moved to Colorado, and one thing I discovered that they did not have in Ohio, and that was mountains, because they didn't. They had little hills is what they were. But Colorado has 58 14,000-foot peaks called 14ers. One of them I could see from every place I lived in Colorado. It's called Longs Peak. It's right outside of Estes Park, the gateway to the Rockies, Rocky Mountain National Park, and it's right there. And it's probably, I think, people would argue with this, but whatever, the closest 14er to Denver, at least the closest one to where I lived, okay? So I looked at this mountain literally for 25 years, and every summer I would say, hey, I'm going to go climb Longs Peak. Finally, 2 years ago, I said, I think I'm going to go climb Longs Peak. And my daughter number 3, my youngest, who's got this really sharp, very good wit and pointed sense of like gotcha in what she says. Not a lot of words, but when she speaks, bam, kind of like her mother. She looked at me and she said, Dad, you're not getting any younger. You better get moving if you're going to go climb that. I was like, you're right. I was staring at the next summer, a knee replacement, so I knew that I was in trouble if I didn't get going. So I grabbed my buddy Justin. We did some research. We found out about the stages of this. There's a hike, and then it starts a climb. And we set out one morning, August morning, I believe it was, 3 a.m. on the trailhead and started walking through. It was a beautiful night. Stars out. There was no moon out, so the stars were just incredibly bright. Walking through the woods, I mean, kind of feeling like the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, hi ho, it's off to climb Long's Peak we go. So we started heading through the woods and got to the beautiful sunrise and got to this place called the Boulder Field. And that's where the climb really starts. And it's divided into stages, okay? There's the ledges, there's the trough, the narrows, the home stretch, and the summit. And all of which, by the way, you can die on, and people do every year. So the thing is, if you die at the wrong time of year, they don't come get you until the next year. So die at the right time of year, or be really smart, be prepared, that kind of stuff. Justin and I summited this mountain. Here's the thing about it. It was 5,000 feet of vertical gain. It was a 15-mile loop, so 7.5 miles up. 16 hours round trip is what the average is. So marathon runners, marathon trail runners, all that, they do it in about 6 hours. My buddy, guy I talked to, said, yeah, I did it. I've done it about 9 times. I ran up at one time. I was like, you know what, dude? Okay, so for us mortals, how long does it take? He said 16 hours. Sure enough, we summited about 11 o'clock in the morning and found out very quickly that it was great to get up to the top. It was wonderful. The views are beautiful. It was a clear day. We had lunch up there. We hung out, took lots of pictures. But then started the long hike down. 7.5 miles back down. For those of you who have ever climbed a 14er or done anything like that, you know that going up is not the easy part, or it's not the hard part. Coming back down is the hard part. So it was back through these stages, back through this home stretch, which was basically a pure slab, back across these narrows, which was 1,000 feet straight down if you fall, back through this just boulder field that was, it seemed like 10 miles long. Back through this sketchy rock. It started to rain at one point. It was like, oh my gosh, let's get out of here quickly. Back through the narrows, back to the boulder field, and we were still about 6 miles home, down, step by step by step. And I remember thinking with every pounding step, Justin, who's in front of me, heard every step all the way down for about the next 6 hours. Oh, pound, just this groaning. And he was like, are you okay? Well, the difference between Justin and I, we're built very differently. I mean, he is as fleet-footed as like a gazelle, and I felt like a war elephant walking back every step of the way. We're just built very differently. And I wanted at one point just to give up. If we could have cashed it in, I would have, because this was a grueling hike. One guy called it the death march back down, and I'm like, yeah, that's what it felt like. And I wanted to give up. And I realized we couldn't. There was only one way down, and it was back all the way to the car. When we finally got back, there was a sense of fatigue like never before. And yet, we were glad to get back, and I couldn't wait just to get home. I wonder, man, as we talk about this subject today, how many of you have seen that play out in your life? How many of you have keyed up for an adventure, keyed up for something in your life, and you're like, you know what, let's go for it. Let's just go get it. And you do the planning, you do the homework, you prep, you do all the things you need to do, and yet right in the middle of it, it gets really, really hard. And you just want to cash it in. But like this, how many times can you not just cash it in? You can't tap out. How many times in life, but whether it's in a relationship, at work, with your kids, with your wife, or with your girlfriend, or in a situation you're in, even physically, in a physical challenge, you can't just quit. How do you do it? How do you get through? Today, we're looking at one of those 4 P's. Remember, passion, power, purpose, perspective. We're looking at the first one of those, passion, with living a life of sustained, finishing power. I'm going to go the long haul kind of passion. Here's what I know about you. Men who are dialed into this podcast, men who are like, when are you going to start this thing? Let me know when it gets going. Come on, Rob, we're with you, man. We want to see it happen. We want to go. We need it. The thing I know about these men is that they are men of passion. They are men who have a deep drive in their life. There's like this fire in their belly that is just fueling them. They get up on a daily basis. They hit it. They go. They grind. That's just who they are. They're not guys you have to push off the couch and be like, come on, dude, or walk over and check for a pulse just to see if they're even alive. And if you're one of those guys, please tune in. I think we can help you too. But the men I know who lean into this kind of stuff are guys with a fire in their belly, and it is good. That thing in you that just burns to be involved in your community, in your family, in your neighborhood, at work, to go achieve, to be the guy who just shows up everywhere he goes. That is a good thing. And our world needs it desperately every day. Our world needs you to live a life of passion. But the thing I'm talking about here is deeper than just that kind of pop culture kind of live a life of passion thing. It's going deeper than that into what I believe is the core of who you are. The very gut and core of your life that I believe is universal. It's in every man and every woman on planet Earth who has ever lived. It is given not by accident, not by some fluke of nature. You cannot explain a universal like that. Instead, I believe, my belief is that it's given by God Himself. It is universal. Most cultures of the world speak about it. Every religion of the world speaks about it when they speak about humankind and specifically about men. There is passion, lover language in every culture of the world, every piece of literature. And the piece of literature that I grab onto is out of the Hebrew literature of the Old Testament in the Bible, the book of Deuteronomy. There is a word that is used throughout the Hebrew scriptures for this word passion, and it really is the word where we get soul, and it's the word nephesh. It's a Hebrew word that means a living, breathing being. A something living inside of you that is your soul, that is your spirit. It's the core of emotion. It's the core of drive in your life. It's nephesh. It's the soul. And it's in every man alive. Greater in some, maybe retired in others, maybe needs to be dusted off, kind of blow off the dust off of it and resurrect it. But it's in every man alive. Little innocent plug for a retreat that I put together right here. There's a retreat that we put together called With Everything. And it actually goes through each one of these P's. And it takes a look at each one of them. And we engage with different activities and talking and some group things that we have. And it's a tremendous weekend. Hang on to the word With Everything, or email me at the end of this episode. Hey, I want to know more about With Everything. Would love to tell you more about it. But that's it. That's what we're talking about today is just like the story of us coming off of Long's Peak and wondering if we were ever going to get there and wanting to tap out, there is something about sustained passion and about tapping into this soulish part of you, this passion, this nephesh, this soulish energy in you. And I want to ask the question, how do we take that and go the long haul in life? Because here's the problem. We know exactly what it is. I bet you could tell me exactly what the problem standing between you living a life of passion and what is the barrier, the enemy, or the problem standing in the way? What is it? Say it. Can't hear you. Sorry, it's a podcast. The problem is that life is difficult. It's a very opening line of M. Scott Peck's book, The Road Less Traveled. Life is difficult. This is the great truth, one of the greatest truths of life, he says. The Road Less Traveled, M. Scott Peck. If you haven't read it, read it. The reality is that our situation in life, while we've been given passion and soul to live with, there is a problem that stands in the way, and that life is difficult. It just gets difficult. It gets more difficult. I remember when I graduated from college, I'd gone through 4 years of school and thought that life was really difficult in college. And then I got to my first job. And guess what I found out? I found out that they wanted me to show up every day. And they wanted me to work not only hard, but they wanted me to work smart. They wanted me to accomplish. They wanted me to achieve. I had to work weekends sometimes. I'd work evenings sometimes. And it was the hardest that my life had ever been at that point. But what I did is, I've always been like this in my life, I decided to get around a group of guys who were older than me. So I found a group of guys, and I was in Bloomington, Indiana, who were in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. These were guys who didn't just work days and nights and some weekends, but they had kids, they had families, they were coaching sports. One guy had a JD and an MBA. He was both a lawyer and an MBA. That's a really dangerous combination, by the way. But he had 2 businesses that he ran while being involved in the Alumni Association of his fraternity, while being involved in his church, while raising kids and having a marriage, and being involved in this men's group that I was in. And I thought my life was hard, and it was. At 24, it was as hard as it's ever been. It was as challenging as it's ever been. So when I'm around other young men, I just kind of shake my head the same way that they did and thought, yeah, it's as challenging as it's ever been. Not only is life difficult, but there are things that hit you in your life that just want to make you tap out. Like if there's an exit place here, if there's an off-ramp, I want to take it. I remember when our first daughter was born, daughter number 1 of 3. Man, it was a great season of life. Getting pregnant, that was the fun part. Having the kid, I thought I was doing something really special because I went to Lamaze training and all that and thought I was like a key player in this whole thing. Little did I know, I was going to be told about 5 minutes into this labor, you have bad breath, get away from me. So that kind of hurt my feelings. I thought I was a key player. I thought it was really important. Not so much. But we went through this whole labor, and those of you who have kids or who, you've been there, it's just a really cool time. And, the whole thing, you earn a whole different respect level for your wife when you watch her deliver a baby. It's like, oh my gosh. But our life was way up here, and we're like, we're having a baby. I'm like, you're having a baby. She's like, shut up. All of that was going on. And the first words I heard when our daughter was delivered were this: let's start counting fingers and toes. I was like, what? Let's start counting fingers and toes. And it was quiet in that room. There was a silence that I can still feel to this day. And we went from the highest high to the lowest low like that. Maybe you've been there. Our daughter was born with a syndrome called Vactral syndrome, and you can Google it, Vactral, I believe. And one of the things that's noticeable in that is the L part of this acronym, and that she was born without a tibia bone in her leg and a radius bone in her forearm. And so she had a noticeable limb disorder. And I remember thinking, and my wife went through a very similar journey, but I just remember thinking, what am I going to do? I mean, I'm 27 years old. I went to school. I tried to do everything right. We, tried to live a good life. We did all the prenatal drugs. We went to Lamaze. Nothing had anything to do with it. But we were trying our best to do life the right way. And how in the world do you end up in the club called disabilities? I didn't know, but I do know I just wanted to tap out over the next several weeks. My soul, my nefesh, my passion was so impacted. And I just thought, what am I going to do? But I couldn't, could I? Suppose I could. That would be a horrible story. But I couldn't tap out. I had a wife who depended on me. I had a little girl who was about that big, if you're in audio land, about, 14 inches long, who depended upon me, who needed a strong dad, who had to figure out what it took to go the distance and live a life of sustained passion. Daughter number one is, of course, now 27 years old, beautiful actress, part of an acting guild, a professional theater company for disabled adults. Doing great in her career, doing great in life, but I didn't see any of that when she was a newborn. And I needed to figure out, how do I make this happen? You see, men, if we were to share our stories, and that's a lot of what this podcast is going to be about, the next stage is going to be about sharing life, but not just in some kind of emotional smorgasbord kind of way. In a way of sharing life for the purpose of sharpening iron, one man's life sharpening another, one story sharpening another, and acting as a guide to help you summit life's climb. And hopefully getting emails and stories and feedback and questions from an audience literally all over the globe who say, how can I do this? What does this look like? Here's my story. And hopefully having men in cohorts and groups all over the world who are sharpening each other. That's the vision. And your story, I'm sure, has some pain to it as well. And I share that with you to just let you know that I get it. I get it. So back to the question. How can you and I live a life of sustained passion, especially when life is not so fun hiking through the woods at night on your way to an adventure, but when you're like, I'm on my way down this hill, every step is grueling, this hit my life, how do I keep going? How do you live a life of sustained passion? Here's the plan. I'm going to give you a 2-step plan. There are many steps. We could invent a mission to Mars here and have 400 of this and 300 of this. I'm going to boil it down to 2 things. We're going to talk about a lot of other things along the way in this podcast in the next stage, but I want to give you 2 things right now. How can you live a life of sustained passion? Number 1, abandon passion killers. Abandon passion killers. There are so many passion killers in your life. They are everywhere around you. I'll bet if you were to just kind of inventory them right now as you're listening to this, here are a couple of them, and these are just the ones around my life every day. The temptation to medicate with alcohol. Perhaps the medication the tendency to over-dedicate to work. Being in maybe toxic relationships. For you, it may be recreational drug use. And I'm in Colorado and people are like, oh yeah, man, you got weed out there. Isn't it great? I'm like, no, And you should see what it does to men I know. It buries their drive. It crushes their passion. For you, it may be a toxic relationship. It may be an addiction. It may be being around negative, toxic people. There's a lot of things that can kill your passion. One of them I know is this: living a life of 24/7 busyness. 24/7 busyness destroys the development of your emotional, spiritual core. Busyness, never-ending drive can destroy your passion. Let me frame this question for you just to bring it down to a very practical level. What is the first thing you do when you get up in the morning? I know. You take a pee. Okay, great. We all do that. All right. Get up in the morning, go to the bathroom. I mean, after that. Coffee, water, start to hydrate. Then what? Go to the gym? Take a look at email? Take a look at the news? Text? Social media? What do? You hit all of that stuff and then hit whatever time you start work, and then you're driving, busy all day. And it's somewhere in the afternoon, I don't know, 5:30, 6, 7, whatever your time is, you tap out, you grab some dinner, you watch whatever on TV or do whatever, you go to bed, you get up the next morning and do the same thing over and over again. Man, here's what that will do to your life. Here's what that will do to your passion over the long term. It will cause you to run on empty. There's an article I read from the American Psychological Association that talks about the effects of chronic stress. Okay, we were made as human beings, again, universally. Every culture has this. We were made with a very simple, primal fight or flight mechanism. It's a mechanism in our brains that cues in and drives us towards either fighting a battle or running away from one and being safe. But here's what that does over the long term. Check this out. You know what it does over the long term to be in a chronic state of that? It affects every system in your body. Your musculoskeletal system, your respiratory system, cardiovascular, endocrine, gastrointestinal, nervous, even your reproductive system is affected. This article started talking about how, hey, listen, man, you've got lower levels of testosterone, you've got lower sperm count as a result of chronic stress. Not to mention chronic pain, respiratory disease, hypertension, heart attack, stroke symptoms, chronic fatigue, depression, immune disorders, ulcers, bowel problems, all kinds of stuff because of living in chronic stress. Fight or flight is good for you when you need to fight or flight. But how many of us are driven into that every day? Do you see what's at stake here? Do you see what's at stake, man? Living a life that's driven that way in 24/7, chronic, running on empty, day after day, year after year. Eventually, it's going to take a toll on your body, but I guarantee you it will take an effect on your soul. It will kill your soul. So what do? You run away from those things. What do you do instead? You chase after passion fuelers. What's a passion fueler? It's something that you do every day of your life that refuels you. Again, what's the first thing you do when you get out of bed in the morning? After you go to the restroom, after you drink water, after you drink coffee, whatever. What is the daily rhythm of your life like? What's the daily rhythm? What does that morning routine look like? What does it look like? The thing I saw modeled by my mom passed away just 3 months ago. I remember we were putting together her funeral service. The thing that that I talked about, and the theme of this was called Something Beautiful. It was all about my mom's life, was that she, every day of her life, started sitting in a chair, drinking a cup of coffee, reading the Bible, which wasn't just crazy church lady religious stuff. It was a source of life for her. Men, what is the daily rhythm of your life? What is the source of your life? What is the thing that is a passion fueler in your life? I want to challenge you to discover that. For me, my life, it's really been over the last 10 years that I've really developed that daily rhythm, the daily rhythm of my life. And it's sitting down, grabbing a cup of coffee, sitting down in a chair and reading through or walking through memory, things that I've committed to memory and have meditated on and literally drew pictures on and made notes on and committed this stuff not just to my head, but to the deep core of my life. Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd. I have everything I need. Things like Psalm 27, where David, who is a king, a warrior, and a poet, he writes something incredible. He says, one thing I ask of the Lord. This is what I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze upon the beauty of the Lord and to seek him in his sanctuary. My goodness, of all the things he wanted, the one thing he wanted was to meditate on God. There's all kinds of places in the Psalms that I go to, and I just kind of camp out there every morning. And for some of you are thinking, man, that's exactly what I do. I do it every day. I'm so faithful. Great. Others of you are thinking, man, it sounds kind of religious. I'm not religious. Okay, great. What are you doing to fuel yourself? One man I talked to said, you know what? I love watching the world wake up every morning. I love the way he said that. I love watching the sun come up. He said, I love sitting in a duck blind. I love sitting in a deer stand. And I'm like, that's where you connect with God? He goes, absolutely. I would encourage you to figure out what works for you in your life. And the reason I share a little bit of my soulish journey with you here in this very first one of the P's of passion, I share that with you because that's the place I found. It's the most lasting place that I found. That's the plan, man. Avoid failure by avoiding passion killers that have a chronic effect on your soul, have a destructive effect on your soul. And lean in and chase after those passion fuelers in a daily rhythm. As we wrap up this episode, I want to leave you with a gold nugget, I call them. It's just one piece of mostly ancient scripture that I've found that I want to just pass on. And if you're not highly, quote unquote, religious, that's okay. Lean into this, listen up. This is out of Jeremiah chapter 6, verse 16. It says, check out the verbs here. Stand at the crossroads and look. Ask where the good way is and walk in it. And you will find rest for your souls. Stand at the crossroads, like just stop the 24/7 nonstop of your life. Stand there and look. Ask where the good way is. Like there's a million different ways you can take. Which way is the good way? And walk in that way. Just go that direction. And you will find rest for your souls. Men, the idea I want to leave you with is this, that you were made to live a life of sustained passion. In order to live a life of sustained passion, you need to abandon passion killers in your life and chase after passion fuelers. It's that simple, and yet it's that challenging, isn't it? I know. I live in the same world you do. One of the distinctives of this podcast is that it's not just a monologue, or it's not just, humor or pop culture or anything like that. It's intended to be very, very, very practical in your life. And so what I want you to do, I want you to click on the link below, and there's a PDF that I want to send you to help you develop your daily rhythm. I want you to just click on the link below or email the next stage at Sherpa5280.com. And you can register on our website. I will send this PDF to you. And it's called just the Daily Rhythm. It'll help you develop, not my way for you, but your way for you to develop a daily rhythm in your life. Man, you were made to live a life of sustained passion, of going the long haul, not just for a couple steps at a walk in the woods, but all the way. In order to live a life of sustained passion, you've got to abandon passion killers in your life and lean into those passion fuelers. And if you begin, I promise you, even baby steps, walking one step at a time into that, you will find that your life is improved, it's growing, it's deepening. I encourage you to do that. That's just step one of the 4 P's. Remember, passion, purpose, power, perspective. That's just step one. I want to set up right now and just tease next week or next episode for you. And that is the second of these P's, and it's living a life of power. It's not just about false bravado or macho stuff or gym guy or whatever, or setting you up like you got to be something you're not, but it's keying into who you are, living a life of power in your world, and I don't want you to miss it. So be part of this next episode. Thanks so much for being part of the next stage. I'm so excited that you've joined us. It means a lot. I'd love for you to drop me an email, the next stage at Sherpa5280.com. Sherpa is spelled SHERPA, the number 5280.com. Share this with a friend if you found it useful. Get a group of guys together, listen to it, talk about it, spread it. We would love to have this thing spread as far as it can. So thanks, my friends. I'm really excited you've joined us for this episode, and we'll see you on the next episode of The Next Stage.